Hi, Carly.
Hi, Carly.
Hello. You have the best hair. I can't even get through
Oh,
the first moment.
it is so great, isn't it?
You. I
I
wish you could see it in all its glory because this lighting doesn't do it justice. But
It's blue under there.
my hairdresser is an evil genius.
Hello and welcome to Table for Five with no reservations. Take a seat at the table for a fresh, sweet, salty, tart, and pleasantly bitter conversation.
Thank you for taking a seat at the table. Tonight we are continuing our school chat in this series. I have Jen Dunn with me tonight,
Hi, everyone.
Rachel Flanagan,
Hey, everybody.
Kim,
Hi there.
Jamie,
Hello.
and our special guest tonight is Carley Rae. We're going to be talking to her about formal school system and a school she had ran and run in Missoula, Montana. And she's a friend of mine, so I'm excited about that. Yay. Yeah. Hey, Carly.
Hi, Taba.
So if you want to tell the people who you are, kind of what you do, your background a little bit, that'd be awesome.
So, unfortunately, the sad news around all of this is that during the pandemic, we closed Learn Inc. The board of directors. I had stepped off the board of directors in January of 2020, and then the board of directors chose to close when the pandemic hit. But my background is in psychology and actually movement therapy, fitness, and bodywork, massage therapy. I currently am teaching here in Missoula at a massage school, and I do integrative bodywork that focuses on like neurosensory systems and structural integration, and really trying to like reorganize and rewire people's systems, whether they may land somewhere on the spectrum or have some other diagnosis or a lot of trauma clients. And then I teach at the massage school here. And I also have a coaching business that offers coaching and personal development that surrounds the topics of stress, toxic stress overload, managing stress, managing communication. And one of the niches that I work with is actually young men, to help them have better relationships, have success in whatever arena of life they might be finding struggles in. But at my school, it was mostly teenage boys. And, here we are almost 3 years since the closing of the school. And now all of those boys are now young men. And I, in that whole process, realized that our culture really has forgotten our little boys in a lot of regards, of teaching them how to get their needs met and teaching them how to communicate their needs and understand, and really doing all of that without perpetrating violence. And
Yeah.
and so I do work with all genders when it comes to stress, but I really focus on a lot of personal development with young men, and actually men of all ages. So
Yeah, that's great. So we wanted to talk a little bit because we all have our opinions on public school and good and bad. Some of our kids have gone, are going back, made their way through. We've done a variety of different types of options outside of public school here. So tell me a little bit about what started the school, what was the purpose of the school, what you guys did there, the function of it a little bit.
So we always said that the school started us. We were working with a handful of kids over a summer program, and they all presented with different manifestations. Somebody who was considered Asperger savant before they put Asperger into the spectrum,
Yeah.
the DSM. And we had a like very low verbal autistic boy, a couple kids that had like early relational trauma. I worked in this modality called HANDLE, which stands for Holistic Approach to Learning, HAN, Holistic Approach to Neurodevelopment and Learning Efficiency. And it was developed
It's a mouthful.
it is.
Yeah.
It's developed by a woman named Judith Bluestone, who is on the spectrum herself. And it's a set of functional exercises and therapeutic touch techniques that aim to soothe and or stimulate the neurosensory systems, the various neurosensory systems. And Missoula is about 70,000 people, so, smallish town. And we kind of became this word of mouth known as the Athie Whisperers, where we just were able to reach these kids and have it turn into something that they were happy to leave the house and go and do. And so when the fall of that year, I think it was 2013, rolled around, the parents reached out to us and said, so this fall you're going to take them full time, right? and that's what started the school. And we grew.
Don't you
Gotta
love
love
a good
those parents.
scramble?
Yeah, gotta love those
Yeah.
parents.
Well, every school year in the fall, there's a huge scramble. So we developed what we called individualized learning opportunities. And so the curriculum was built around each child. And we were very small. At the end, we maxed out, I think, at 17 students. So we started with 4 and then grew over the years. And every child had their own learning plan, their own development plan built around their specific needs. And academics didn't really come into play until like high school age. And we also were unaccredited by choice. My executive director said that there was not an accrediting body that he was willing to attach his name to, and that we would have to sacrifice the model in order to gain the accreditation. So it was very, very alternative. It was play-based, movement-based, based off of a lot of Socratic learning kind of practices and nonviolent communication, which is a beautiful curriculum created by this man named Marshall Rosenberg that really identifies needs, feelings, requests, and kind of moves through this cycle of how we might communicate ourselves in our struggles. And then we looked through this lens at the child of neurosensory development and what was going on in their nervous system that was resulting in the behavior that we as the adults might consider undesirable. And it was such a beautiful thing. We would have quarterly meetings with the family, and the kids really had their own agency and their own autonomy. One of the main rules, I don't know if rule is the right word, but one of the main agreements that we made with the students is that they were allowed to say no, and they were allowed to have autonomy over their body and their learning path. And it didn't always look like one would think it is supposed to look, but the main thing that we were concerned about was helping these children regulate to their bodies and regulate to their environments. And then academics, when they want to learn, they will. Like, no one's going to sit idle. And when it matters to them, they will engage. And the best example is when a few of them were in driver's ed. Boy, they were learning that driver's ed manual. Yeah, they wanted to drive. And so we had just amazing resources. We had a great library. We had a great movement space. We had a great music studio. We had an amazing computer lab. They got to build their own gaming computers, and just like so much support from the community to give these kids this amazing experience. And I think for myself and for the people that worked for us and the partner that I built the school with, we just wanted to be a safe adult for these children. They all came with pretty significant horror stories of being in the traditional model. The Asperger savant, brilliant child, his second grade teacher could not fathom another way to test his math skills besides worksheets. And pencil on paper rattled his bones. And so it would be a knockdown drag out in the classroom, going out the door to school, and like he doesn't need a worksheet. He is a calculator in his brain. He's not gonna write out every step of like that's a waste of his life to do that, and it really hurts him to use graphite on paper. And I had another student who was duct taped to his desk by his second grade teacher. He would not sit still. And so he just flat out refused to go to school for years. And we slowly got him to go. Actually, Zach and Shane went and sat in on one of his therapy sessions to just say, hey man, just walk through the door. Like, like once you're there, whatever you want or need to do is totally okay. We just want you to come. And he is actually one of the kids that we got to graduate from the program and went into the Marines.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So, you know, everybody had their own unique story, whether it was a diagnosis or behavior problems or early relational stuff. None of them were successful within the traditional model. And a lot of them had a lot of deeper on the pyramid of learning layers that they needed to deal with. And academics didn't really kick in until like 16. And then how we would get them college ready is we would just have them get their GED, or in Montana, the equivalency is called the high set. And so that's where academics came in. And one of my graduates also went on to go to college, and he's doing amazing. I run into him sometimes around town. He's 24 now.
Wow. So one of the things that we talk about often is kind of like the fight. Sometimes, not sometimes, I would say a lot of times, if you don't know what you're doing when you're dealing with the public school or this formulaic system of education, which a lot of us parents don't know, or it can be emotionally triggering to us, like me specifically, like I can read whatever they want to send over to me, but for some reason, the school process is just so draining and emotional for me to deal with, because you walk in and like a fighting stance almost is it, and you can reshape it and change it to be collaborative, but you have to climb a mountain in order to do that, you know. So tell us a little bit about like what can public, in your opinion, what could public education do now in their formula that they have to support kids like our kids? You know, what could be different?
Well, I think that the college process for training teachers needs to be completely different. The way that technology has changed our culture, our school system is not actually keeping up with the way that information is gleaned and learned in a lot of regards. And most entry-level teachers have no idea about special, you know, like Zach had his master's degree in autism. And that even was like a heavy ABA curriculum, which now there's actually studies coming out that are saying that ABA is not the answer. And it works really well with littles, like the little kids. Once the child has any kind of their own personality or any sense of their own agency, ABA is not the answer. And I think it's a systemic issue, you know, like I don't know if anyone's seen Waiting for Superman. It was the documentary that Michael Moore made. That like the whole educational structure is wrapped up in lobbying and corporate law, and you know, like a lot that your average public school teacher, their hands are tied. They have a lot of freedom, you know. And so my heart goes out to all the teachers. It's such a tough job, and I think that early childhood development, you know, is probably another thing that is really important, and universal pre-K, and you know, all of these,
all these magic wands we'd like to
all these things that like need to change within our system so that kids can be school ready. But when it comes to the autistic population, we have to change everything. You know, like we kept saying, like, the whole system needs to be like leveled and rebuilt in a way that actually serves the need of a biological being, you know, that has appropriate lighting and appropriate resources and appropriate places to sit. Like, to sit in a plastic chair under fluorescent lights for 40 hours a week isn't good for a neurotypical person, let alone someone with sensitivities. And so there's so much to do. And I think really one of the best things that public educators can do is can learn how to look at a child through a lens of their neurosensory system, learn
Yeah.
how to see behavior at like this deeper level of like, they're not skilled to use their words. They're not
Yeah.
skilled to even understand what's going on with them. And so it's the adult's job to understand what's going on with them and to not label or pathologize the behavior.
Yeah.
You know, to like see that the behavior is this little being is crying for help and they don't know, you know, and so they can't be forced and they can't, you know, like they can't be moved and they have to have space and they have to have someone who understands what's going on with their system. And so like empowering yourself as an educator through continuing ed is really important. And another thing is to learn a language of nonviolence, to learn how to strip away judgment and evaluation from the way that you treat a child.
Yeah.
And to really learn how to communicate yourself in objective reality and to ask the right questions and to help, you know, like even in taking our kids into public, there was always an opportunity for me to teach another adult that's not how you treat a child who's misbehaving.
Yeah.
You know?
Preach.
Yeah.
Well,
You were
yeah.
halfway through that sentence, Carly, and I'm like, yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Take a moment.
Well,
You know, and then we would get back to school and I would say, okay, let's talk about how not all adults are skilled. And so when we go into public, can we maybe think about how other adults are not going to see our behavior and deal with us in the same way? So like, how can we like plan, and I'm talking to my high schoolers, you know, like how can we plan to not be verbally assaulted by a stranger adult?
yeah.
You know, like how can we prevent that from happening?
Oh, and I think we do like the IEP table, like when we go into public school and have to sit down and make these goals and do this whole rigmarole for the get our kids support that's necessary. I always take an opportunity to like do the teaching in a fast, quick fire space
Yeah.
because I want my son to be successful in school. It's not something I want to do necessarily, but for him to be successful, I have to go through this whole thing that is like, okay, we need visual support, we need X, Y, and Z to make this successful. If you have an issue, if something changes, let me know so we can work on it at home and try and modify and prepare him, because the facts are that a teacher who has 16, 20, 25 kids in their classroom can't do the amount of preparing or talking, because we talk to our kids so much in order for them to grasp concepts and to understand what's coming next. Let me be a support for you in the classroom to do that. Because if you tell me ahead of time that a schedule is going to change or that something is going to be wonky, like even something as simple as like a dress up day at school can cause complete havoc on the system. You know, so if you let me know about that ahead of time, I can say, okay, do you want to dress up for school? Which for Nixon is absolutely never. No, thank you. He doesn't participate in that business, but he loves seeing the other kids dressed up, you know. So I can say all the other kids are going to be in their pajamas today. You don't want to wear yours, that's totally fine. And it doesn't phase him to not be in the pajamas like the other kids. But the real thing is like this piece that's missing is this collaborative space where you empower parents instead of it feeling like you're fighting for everything. Like, give me an opportunity to support you also in the classroom, because we can work together, because I know you don't have everything that you need in order to make this successful. So if you want me to do that, let me know, because I'll do it, you know.
Well, it's
and
like
not
parents a partner in what you're doing, because it's our kids. Like,
yeah,
don't understand that, and so much is hidden around like, oh, we can't say this because of these rules or what, and it's like, this should not be this way at all.
That was one of the things that we implemented at Learn Inc. was there was the learning team, and the parents were part of the learning team. And, you know, one of my students had an occupational therapist, a speech pathologist, his parents, his like person who was kind of the nanny a little bit, and then us, the educators. And so he had 7 people on his team that would get together and talk about his needs and talk about his trajectory and his success. And we reached this point where his mom was like, he's thriving. 6 adults dispatched to this young man's wellness and his learning. And so of course he's thriving, because people are looking at it. And so that's, I think, like, having some sort of ability for there to be, I don't know, a Slack channel or some sort of technology where parents can communicate with teacher.
Yeah.
I also think that one person and 20 children is not safe.
I agree with that one.
And I know that there's a lot of paras out there and that kind of stuff, but the we used to have the analogy that it would turn into Lord of the Flies sometimes up in there where the children would just get into that mob mentality and kind of take over the place. And I can see how that level of stress and frustration leads to yelling, leads to shaming, leads to tactics that just shut a person down. But in the nonviolent communication curriculum, he talks about how you never want to push anybody, especially a child, into a corner where their only options are to submit or rebel.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, I would love to see the Handle Institute get into the public school system and start training teachers.
Well, it's mind blowing, especially like, the district here in Billings is short on resources, especially for like self-contained classrooms. A lot of kids are being pushed into the regular mainstream classroom with limited support. And if you can provide even just a glimpse of the information and knowledge to regular gen ed teachers, they can be a support not only in their own classroom, but in other classrooms, like teach them information. That's all it takes. I mean, really, like, don't, like, for my son, if you are trying to push him into, and our kids need guidance and they need motivation and they need to be pushed sometimes, because also our kids will not do anything that they don't really want to do, frankly, but if you're trying to really push when there's an elevated situation, it's gonna cause some kind of reaction. A, shut down. B, get out of, however, to get them out of their personal space. And with our kids, their personal space flows way further than any other, like me, like I can deal with personal space being close, but for our kids, when they're elevated, you need to get out of there. You know what I mean? Like even simple things like that on how to like let them come down before you start the pushing again. You can't force them into this space. So it's pretty fascinating. And it's really fascinating that when you pare all of this back and think about their system and their energy and their body, it's successful. Let them be in control of their space, which I think we have this idea that kids should never be in control of anything. And probably from the swing of our generation where we like free flying human beings out in the world, free to do whatever we want. And then people have pulled that back and been like, whoa, maybe that wasn't the greatest idea. Let's not do that.
But there's the other expectation on the other end when they're adults. As soon as they're 18, they're expected to just be able to handle everything on their own when they've never been allowed to. And especially for our kids, it's like, most of us are gonna have to have guardianship and help our kids through that adult part of their lives. But like, there's no training in public school about how to make that tradition or how to like figure stuff out on their own. Like, and like you were talking about earlier, Carly, like our schools were designed around the idea of like basically keeping the children contained in, in for that specific part of the day, so parents could work and different things like that. And so it wasn't really a system designed to like do the best to get the kid or individually help each of our children.
Yeah, I've often said that the public education model in America creates compliant consumers.
And it hasn't changed very much. Like it has changed a little bit, but like when you think of like back in the 50s, the 60s, like the expectations is still almost the same, but the children are so different, and the way people parent are different, and everything, we have so much more information about what works and what doesn't work and how individual children are. Like that's how the teachers are taught at school now, but they're still going by this model where one rule is supposed to fit. It's not every, one size fits all, like at all. It's many, many different sizes in one classroom, but it's like they're still kind of going, and I think this goes for not just like our kids, even typical kids. Like
Yeah.
there are some kids that just don't learn as well. I know now they have all this stuff saying there's not different types of learning, but some people do well with listening, some people do well with what, like everybody's so different, and it's like they're still trying to teach on this one model. So like that just doesn't make sense. But I know financially and all that stuff, like it's what works for that side of it. And some people just aren't academic learners. Like some people just aren't as inclined to learn that way, or so it's
And
like
not every kid's going to
really
go to
hard.
college. I mean, that's what it boils down to. Not every kid's path is college. And we live in a generation now where there's kids on YouTube making millions of dollars doing their jam, not having to get a college education. Do you know what I mean? The technology has changed the function of money in itself,
And I
let
think
alone
they're
the path.
paring back on that now, Tabitha. Like for a lot of stuff is like now they're starting to push kids to go to trade school.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
because there's
Oh,
nobody to
like we
work
do.
in there's nobody to work in the
Because
trades.
nobody's fixing the elevators, Temple
Yeah,
told us.
and you're gonna
Yeah.
make a lot of money as an electrician or a plumber or something like that because there's so few people doing that. They're in such high demand. So it's like now
Yeah.
they're it's like now they're rethinking their they're like,
Yeah.
wait a
Well,
minute.
our education system is really set up to go to college. Like that's
Yeah.
what I mean. My sister's a college counselor. That's what she does. She tries to get the
Yeah.
kids to go to college, and which I think is great for some people. And obviously,
Yeah.
people higher education in certain ways, but like a lot of people don't, and a lot you can just learn online on you have the internet for free for a lot of things. And what I thought about earlier, Carly, when you're talking about the motivation for these kids, and they're not even ready to learn yet, because a lot of our kids have to learn how to learn or find the motivation to learn. I think for a lot of individuals on the spectrum, it's really like for my son, I just think about like he's not going to do something just because. Like
Yeah.
he'll do it because there's a reason to do it. And so it's just so black and white. Their heads are like, well, I'm not going to learn algebra because I will never use this in my life. And so they need like the actual motivation to learn, like, oh, like you're talking about, like they want to drive, so they're going to do that. So
Yeah.
I just wish there was more of that supported at schools.
Yeah.
And I
My
have to say
daughter
that
goes to a school that's we live in Minnesota. It's called a level 4 school. It's basically like ultra supported. She has a crazy high staff ratio to super low student count, and it has curved hallways and lights and window boxes to sit in and wiggle chairs instead of desks, and all of the things are, have attention paid to them. But it's a part of the public school system, so it's this many months out of the year. It's closed on all of these days. It's this, so they can acknowledge that my kid needs a care team that's 7 deep, but only these 9 months. Like there is no continuation of that. And so we risk regression, aggression, all the issues, all the crummy fallbacks, all the things, because I am one with a concussion sometimes. One, like one. It's such a breath of fresh air, Carly. Like I want to pause this recording to say, we invite you back when you open Learn Inc. again. And then each franchise a damn location for all of our compounds that we're building and dreaming of. Because truly, it's not about school. It's about learning to learn so that you can progress in what you want. It's about being a whole person and being valued and honored as such. I would sign anything to get my daughter out of any regular old program, to get her in a place where she can be honored and supported, empowered, and like stretched. I just think it's beautiful. So, I mean, just welcome back. Next time you're ready to open again, we will have you that day for a grand opening. And then we'll be your first 5 franchisees.
I think the real way to reach is to try and educate educators and educate legislators.
Yeah.
Because we ran into a lot of obstacles in seeking the accreditation, in trying to talk to the guy who holds the purse strings for the state of Montana for autism services. We had the worst meeting of our lives with him. He was so dismissive and so rude, and basically was like, if you're not coming to me with evidence-based, peer-reviewed, meh, and basically just shut us down, you know?
Meanwhile, all the parents are like,
so,
watch this, take my friend's kid.
Yeah, you want to come stay with our kids for a week and then see how it works? That's
right.
evidence-based.
And I also think implementing some sort of curriculum for high school seniors on parenting and child development, really, of like this is what is going to go down, and giving people, because something that also happens is that public school teachers receive a lot of kids that don't get the parenting that they need.
Mm-hmm. It's a hard job. I mean, it really is a hard job.
And you know, like there is a lot of people that enter into parenting not totally ready. And I would say most parents enter into parenting not totally ready.
Yeah. Even if you think you're ready, brace yourself.
Yeah. So
I would say all parents enter into parenting.
Well, and I'm just gonna say, looping back to the educators, you know, and unfortunately, it's kind of like you said, Carley, like they don't get to choose what is brought in, or what. I'm sure they would like that extra help and that extra knowledge of all of those things, but like you said, it's the guy holding the purse strings, right? So the educators don't really even get a say in it,
right.
And they're the ones essentially that are overwhelmed by it. Like Tabitha said, having our kids mainstreamed, not enough people to take care of them, overwhelmed children in a classroom full of neurotypical children. You know, it's just a recipe for disaster. Really, it's like a volcano waiting to erupt.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to my niece she doesn't have a diagnosis, but she has behavioral issues, emotional dysregulation and stuff. And like her teacher said, the pandemic too has just, she said she had 6 kids in her classroom with all similar things, 6 in a kindergarten classroom. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot for a teacher to be doing, along with doing like all the regular stuff, even with the paras. But unfortunately, paras are out sick. They're pulled for different reasons.
Yeah.
And sometimes these teachers are by themselves. Like there's just not enough help in the school. So it's like
they're stretched out, and then you
well,
add
we pay them pennies too.
Yeah.
That's the other
Yeah.
thing. Our educators do not make enough money. It's absolutely ridiculous. You can
show
go
me a fully staffed district.
school. Yeah, especially after the pandemic.
a fully staffed anything, really.
Yeah.
Anywhere now.
Yeah. So you can do training for teachers. Let's talk about that. What can you do for the education system?
So we've done we did like a trauma-informed classroom education seminar with Conscious Pursuits. And then we did an NVC education with Conscious Pursuits. And we're actually able to offer OPI credits. So I just need to like look into that again, because Zach kind of headed up the bulk of that arm of it all. But you know, I have some neuro-sensory curriculum that just talks about the various neurosensory systems and how they work and what disruptions within those systems look like, which I think would be a great seminar to put forth. It gives teachers just a different set of goggles to look through and see a child in this different lens. And I also have been on this kick of stress management and managing stress overload and managing burnout, and the actual evidence-based techniques and ways that are coming out around how we discharge the physiology of stress from our bodies so that it doesn't build up and turn into meltdown or shutdown or burnout for us.
Yeah, which we all deal with at this table. I will tell you, we're all at a level of burnout most of the time. Most of the time.
Us and our children.
Us and our children.
What I found is like a lot of the special education teachers at least have an idea of this, and like the school psychologist or the speech pastoral, because they're around this realm. But sometimes when I run into something with a just everyday regular teacher, they clearly have no idea about this stuff. And some of it, like, you can almost see in their minds, like, oh, like we had a run in with my son's teacher. And she's like, well, I know he's capable of this. Like, cause she was like, he wasn't like sitting, I can't remember what it was, but he wasn't staying still or
Hate
something.
that line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, I know he's capable of it because he's done it before. And I'm like, honestly, that day before, he was probably in his head watching a episode of Peppa Pig. Like, you don't know. I just said, well, you know, he's a roller coaster. There's up and down it. Like, he could be anxious about something that's happening in a week, and I don't know it because he can't communicate that. And so he's moving more, or he's excited about something and he's moving more. And she's like, yeah, she's like, oh yeah. And then she just made some comment. She's like, well, but I know he can do this, so I'm going to uphold him to it. And I was like, that's okay. I was like, but he is autistic, so he might not do the same thing he did today that he did yesterday. And she just had no clue. And then we eventually got to agreement that if he's moving around a lot, maybe let him go run in the hall or let him have a 15-minute break. And she was just like, oh, like you could kind of see in her mind. But to her, like, credit, no one ever taught her that. And I don't think she had children of her own at that time. Like, I don't think she really ever even realized that whatsoever. And I'm like, just throw that out there, that might be something. But they have no idea because they don't teach it at all. You don't have to learn it unless you are a special education teacher, anything.
But again, if they're going to integrate our children into mainstream classrooms, then it is somebody's responsibility to make sure that any teacher that has our children in their care, and again, no fault to the teachers, because if they're not given the resources, they can only do what they can do with 35 kids in a classroom. Again, what Tabitha said, they're not paid nearly enough, but they should have that debriefing or
foundation.
I mean,
foundation,
let's be honest. A chapter in a book or a online little thing that you do is not going to prepare you
or
to work with our children. It's not going to. You know what I mean? You can read about it,
but maybe it wouldn't be the shock level of why he's not sitting down. You know what I mean? Like something kind of so basic like that.
Well, I feel that's super deep about administrators. Like, I'm like, okay, I've been fighting for this school that Seeley's now entering as, like, she's a rising third grader. She got into it halfway through her second grade year, but I've been fighting for this placement since pre-K, like knowing I have a Hellcat here and she's leaving your building, like, actively. But I have to sit at meetings where the people have never met a Seeley Flanagan or ever heard of the words that we're discussing. They've never cared about an IEP, and I'm fighting for every single word in those sentences because each of those relates to what she's going to get. And these people have never heard any of these words. Like, how do we need your signature? How are you the gateway to better if you have no idea? How dare you hold the purse string if you don't have any clue?
Well, even just giving information such as, you know, generally there's an issue with sleep with kids who are autistic. Some people might not even know that generalized knowledge that our kids may have.
Mom is a bitch.
Maybe be showing up at 2 hours of sleep. The kid might have slept 2 hours and then they're going to do a whole day of school. They might not be able to participate in any activities, period, that whole day because they've slept for 2 hours. Lots of them have problems with food. They don't eat regular diets. If you're trying to force them as part of their IEP to eat the school lunch, that stuff's not going to happen. Good luck with that. You know, like if they get dysregulated, they might lose their speech. Also, please don't force my kids to make eye contact if they need to raise their hand in the classroom, because that's also going to make them uncomfortable, and they're not going to want to raise their hand and participate in your classroom. I mean, there's all these little simple bits of information that could make all the difference for our kids walking into a classroom the very first day that really, I mean, I think you would get from the parents, the individual kids' parents, but also there's pockets of generalized information about autistic people that is kind of across the board. You know what I mean? Like, I know every single one of our kids at this table has sleep challenges. You know, I mean, we're all not sleeping. And please don't mess with me on a day when my kids only had 2 hours of sleep. I'm not.
And I think
also be sensitive to the parent hasn't slept. The parent also.
I think that also gets very confusing too, because I know you say that, Tabitha, but it's so individualized and different. So like someone might have a kid that falls into none of that. So then the next autistic kid comes and they're expecting them to be the same. You know what I mean? The
Yeah,
same as
I'm just saying if
yeah.
you know these
Well,
things, then you can ask the parent, right? You can
no,
say, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just saying, I think that causes a lot of confusion with people in general, where
No,
they have
absolutely.
this
No.
one idea of like what an autistic kid is, whether because that's what they were experienced with, or they had in their classroom, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And then they expect, you get the next kid, and it doesn't matter where they fall on the spectrum, whether they could be, high function, they could be on the severe side. You have such an array of differences. I think people get
Hmm.
an idea of what they think it should be, or like the art teacher, what they think the kid should be capable of or is capable of. I mean, it's so I feel like that's so hard, because like some kids can be capable of something one day, but the next
Yeah.
day, or maybe they're capable in the morning, but like by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they might not be capable. So it's like there's so much to it. I think there's so much,
Plus, to hell
it's
with social studies when you could be at Carly's school talking about feelings. Like, there's so many things that are just not applicable. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care if my kid knows the progressive math ladder of like American education if she's starting the house on fire. Like, we need to be talking about the right things here, with this kid in this crucial time all the time. I just feel like the compass is
I just think a lot of the issue
dysregulated.
too is they expect everyone to be universal. Even
Yeah.
though they say they don't, they do. Like I had an issue with my daughter who has ADHD, so she did not test out as having a disability, even though she has the ADHD, so she could not get an IEP. That's just the way it worked. And her teacher went out on maternity leave like very early, couple weeks into the school year, and they had a sub for like 8 to 10 weeks. And the sub literally said to me, she just has such a hard time. Like I have to redirect her constantly to the math work. That's not weird. She has ADHD. Why are you even saying this to me? I was like, oh, you do know that she has ADHD. She's like, yeah, I know. And she's like, and she's always writing like, I love gymnastics on her paper instead of like listening to the lesson. And I'm like, well,
She
I mean,
loves
that's ADHD. But you're
gymnastics.
like, maybe you should Google it. Like, I mean, I know she was a substitute, but like, I mean, ADHD, I
Maybe
mean,
you
it's like
should
40% of the
Google
kids
it.
have that. So it's like, they always say these like things to me, and I'm like, you're literally describing.
And I'm not educated in this at all. Like, like we all had
That
to
is,
learn all this from having kids that have
yes.
Yeah,
different.
it's just like so bizarre sometimes, because she's wanting her to fit in with the rest of the class, and she's not going to. Like, and it's not they're not like behavioral issues, not like anything out of the ordinary, which sometimes makes it harder, because it's like they're like, no, she's paying attention. I'm like, I assure you she's not. Like, she
Well,
may look like she's paying attention, but like it's like you said about Jesse, Jamie. It's like you don't know. There's something else. She's probably doing cartwheels in her mind. Like she's not paying attention to what
well,
you're
that's
saying.
like for me when I was growing up, if I was doodling or drawing, I was listening. That's how I did listen. I
Yeah,
had to,
yeah.
which was a lot of but I was gonna say the sad thing to me about our public school system and thinking about that situation and Celia's situation is that our kids literally have to fail
Yeah.
to get the support and help they
Yep.
need. And so we literally set up our system for our kids to fail so they
Mhm.
can get help. So our kids get this in their minds that they're failures
Yep.
and that they are set up in situations where they have to fail to get help. And that is so sickening to me.
It's terrible. That is my biggest problem, and probably why I get so emotional about this school process is because you're literally telling me that you're not going to provide the supports to my child until they're not a success. If you provide the supports for them, they can be a success and
Mhm.
learn how to do this right off the front gate. Don't tell me that you can't implement this stuff unless they're struggling. That is absolutely ridiculous. No.
And inconsistency is such a key for learning disabilities, autism, ADHD, other things. And I don't know why the schools don't see that, because I was quoted that because my daughter got 105 on a geography quiz, that proved that she didn't need academic help. I'm like, no, that proved that she liked what she was learning at that time. And what like my daughter would do is like all her focus would go on like geography. I should be failing everything else, or like everything else would go to the wayside. So then she'd have to jump from, and she learned to compensate. Like she would go on that parent
She
portal,
also
check
likes
her grades.
gymnastics then too, though, at the
Yeah,
same
she would, and then she'd be like, oh, this grade's dropping. Let me go to this subject, do,
One
get
at a
that grade
time.
up.
Yeah. One at a
Then
time.
because she couldn't, it takes her 110% effort to do it. You
Mhm.
can't do 100% effort in 6 subjects. Like
No.
you can't, you burn out. Like she'd be crying her eyes out, me trying to get her homework. It was just, they didn't care. They didn't want to, like, it's like you said, they want to see her fail, and she'd have to fail across the board, not like,
One
you know,
subject.
and eventually in middle school, she did get put on a 504, but it took, no, it was when she was leaving middle school. So she did get help for high school, but it was like, it took so long and so much fighting. And my daughter has autism and never had to fight for a thing. It was just like, they're like, oh, she gets this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh, so we are always very fortunate because I think her needs were more severe than what the school could provide. So she was always outsourced. She always got what she needed. But so when I had my other daughter, who it was very different, obviously she was able to function and be in the regular classroom and stuff like that. But like they wouldn't support her because it was like she wasn't like behind enough. Her scores weren't low enough. But the struggle was so real. It was just, and she still struggles. Like she's in college now and she still, you know what I mean? That struggle, and that's gonna always be with her because she never got the support that she should have got. So it's always like fake it till you make it. I mean, but you can only do that so far, you know?
Yeah. Well, Carly, I feel like we could talk to you about this stuff
Yeah.
for many hours. Many hours.
We're just gonna bring you around to all the states, to all the schools. We're gonna do it. Get a tour of us.
Yeah, before we like Tabs is hosting, so I know that this could be a wrap up that she's trying to pull off right now. But I need to know quickly, as a mom who's desperate, especially those 12 weeks a year, but really for people that don't have access to this little school that we have or all this stuff, like how do we do as you did? How do we get called to build a school? Like what does Sam hell? Because to me, a charter school is not a place that's been in Minnesota anyway. And I don't mean to misspeak or speak shit of a charter school that's here that I don't know about. But to me, a charter school is a way for a group to develop their own thing, which in large part leaves the additional supports that are needed for our kids and the funding for our kids to be supported out.
Yeah.
So how do you build something that then your community can supplement and all the things? Like I realize Missoula is so grassroots, but what the heck? How did you do that?
Blood, sweat, tears, fecal
Yeah.
matter, and all of the
All the things.
and just like the deepest desire to see a child thriving and honestly putting that before my own needs in a lot of regards, and which led to the burnout, which led to my crusade to like become whole.
All the track.
I guess I just want to empower parents to say that like it does not have to look like what the traditional model looks like. And just because public school is telling you it's XYZ, no, your child's well-being is the most important thing. And if they cannot give you that, then you have to go rogue and you have to figure it out. And like there's Montana's laws are very loose, which is why we were able to create such a alternative program and unaccredited and that kind of stuff. But it's really just like the relationship between the parent and the educator that allowed us to do this very individualized work. And between Zach and I, we were a really great team and just like well-spoken and just like so strong in our convictions. And that like, if you get an obstacle and you can't get over it, go around, because your child's well-being is what matters the most. And no one's going to throw you in jail for doing right by your child. And so like, it's not going to look like what the mainstream looks like. It's not. It can't. It's broken. The whole system is broken. And I feel for educators because they are within this system that they have very little control to change. And like, please keep showing up for those kids, like, please, we need you. But also like, get a collective, get a group of moms, and like you have to find that person who is willing to have their boots on the ground with these kids who has the compassion and has the skill level and has the ability to look through this lens. And then that person needs someone to tap them out when
taskmaster.
when they are getting overwhelmed by the the needs of these children. And academics, it does not need to be the focus. And we need to regulate their nervous systems, regulate their bodies, give them social skills, give them a language for nonviolence, give them an ability to communicate, give them ability to understand how they work in the world. And that's not,
yes, please.
Yes.
that's not leaving no child behind, right? Like that is taking care of the needs of this child, regardless of what is being said to us in media or from our legislative bodies or from the corporate structure that has become public school.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I just empower parents. It's whatever you need to do. Like it doesn't have to be, they don't have to go to school, like, but also if you need to work and you need to put them somewhere, like there's gotta be something. The whole system needs.
Yeah. Well, I will say that you can usually go to your state website and it has the licensure requirements for schools. So like Carley was saying, there's a looser licensure requirement in Montana. So there's ways to get around. To any parents out there who want to do this, please do it, because I live here. That'd be great.
Well, and like,
but
we can package the model and just like send a packet to
there, look, Carley can package a
And
model for
I
you.
feel like a lot of
Minnesota.com. Let's do that package tomorrow, please.
I feel like a lot of the schools are not the teachers necessarily, but the higher ups are more concerned with like test scores and how things look on the outside than like what is happening to the individual children in the individual
because
classrooms.
that's all
Like,
tied up with money.
Yes, I was going to say that too. Yeah, so you can look at the licensure requirements. Sometimes they have requirements for who can run the school, what type of education that they have, all these different things of how many kids can be under whose person. Like Arizona had charter schools, public school, private schools, and the same dollars that went to the public school could go to your child for a charter school, which was amazing. They had autism specific charter schools there, all these different programs, because their licensure requirements and money is divvied up differently. But your state should have that on their licensure website. And then also you have to come up with the dollar bills to make this happen.
Yeah, we were a nonprofit and tuition based, and we wanted to give it away for free, and I worked for pennies for a lot of years so that all of the money coming in could go back into the program. And I believe that the PPP funding that came through the pandemic emergency funds would have floated us into brave new world where parents, within sending their kids back to school in the pandemic, were like, we're figuring it out, we're not sending our kids there, and we would have been at capacity and been thriving in a lot of ways. And I would love to see the entire structure of how we educate children in this country undergo incredible changes.
Yeah.
So that we can actually serve the child.
We love to drop dreams on this podcast. We do.
Yeah.
We have so many big dreams.
Expensive dreams.
They're always expensive and they're always just filled with hope. I hope that too. I hope they change the freaking public school education, or at least where I can choose to send my children. So there's other options for kids that do not fit into this standardized model that they're plugging. Carley, you're amazing. People can find you. Tell us where people can find you. We also have a retreat we partnered on, me, you, and my sister, that's coming in September. So tell people about that.
My website is pursueconsciously.com.
I'll put the link in the description.
And anyone can book a consultation call with me for free. And also, we are having a retreat in Whitefish. It is called Renew and Release. And this year's topic of the Renew and Release retreat is all about stress and burnout. And so we're going to talk about signs and symptoms of stress and burnout are, and what the studies and evidence-based science that's coming out around how we build that up in our body and what we do to discharge that from our body so that we can complete the stress response cycle and we don't get that buildup of cortisol and other stress hormones that soak our brains and make us less functional. It's at the Spirit Works Herb Farm in Whitefish, Montana, which is this wonderful property that has a sauna and a cold plunge and a movement studio and really lovely place. And it's going to be like meet and gather, share our stories. We'll have movement and contemplative practices in the morning. I'll do a 90-minute kind of didactic educational session, and then we'll have lunch and some free time. I'll do an afternoon educational session, and then we'll have an evening movement and contemplative practice session. We'll do 2 full days of that. So arriving Friday, leaving Monday, or if people need to come in Saturday and leave Sunday, that's also available to them. But we do have the place from Friday night to checking out Monday morning. There's actually, looking now, only 7 spots left to fill retreat, and it is all food included. We're going to have it catered by a local vegetarian person, chef in the Flathead. And so just looking forward to connecting and teaching people and just like empowering people to take their lives back from the systemic overculture that
dumpster fire. We like to call it the dumpster fire.
That's so cool. This is weird, but I was just reading a book and a biography, and the person went to rehab in it, and he was talking about a lot of that kind of stuff. And I was like, man, I'm not addicted to anything, but I need rehab. So this is like, perfect.
Yeah, a dumping of the burnout. I'm excited. I'm really excited. People can also get coaching from you, teachers. Sounds like the school system could use your trainings. Reach out to Carley. She's pretty amazing, spectacular person, filled with light. Love it. So I'll put your website in the description so people can find it. And I feel like we could talk about more things besides school with you, Carley. I thank you so much for coming. Joining us.
Carley, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us at the table for this episode of the Table for Five No Reservations podcast. Big thank you to all of our supporters. If you would like to become a supporter, please check out the description of this episode, where you will also find episode information, how to sign up for our newsletter, and find links to us individually. Join us next Monday for more, and while you wait, check out our content on Facebook and Instagram. If you are enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and rate and review us wherever you listen. To contact us, you can email us at tablefor5podcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next week. Can't wait to sit with you again.